Hi, my name is Jacoby Urban, and today I will be summarizing the IMA Statement of Ethical Professional Practice in consideration of the article Uncooking the Books, How Three Unlikely Sleuths Discovered Fraud at WorldCom by Susan Pullman and Deborah Solomon. The IMA Statement has three main sections. First is principles. Principles include honesty, fairness, objectivity, and responsibility. So in the WorldCom case, there were three main players. Those players were Cynthia Cooper, who was the Vice President of Internal Audit, and then two members of her team, Mr. Morse and Mr. Glenn Smith. And it was this team who essentially uncovered the fraud and brought it to light. So they were a great example of the IMA principles. They were honest. They found clues and then slowly kept digging until they had the full truth. They were fair in that their questions were objective. They asked the appropriate team members. They talked to various different departments within the company, within headquarters, as well as team members who were at different locations throughout the company, and trying to understand, some of the problems, some of the entries, and some of the concerns that they had. They were also very responsible. Besides doing this fraud research, they also had their daily jobs to do, which included audits. And so they were very diligent in doing their daily job, but then also taking on this research aspect, which included months and months of late nights, working from closets and file rooms to avoid being detected, as well as crashing the computer in certain circumstances because their queries and running and researching the journal entries were just overloading the computer. And the second section of the IMA statement is the standards section. And the standards include competence, confidentiality, integrity, and credibility. And again, all examples that this team completely covered in an outstanding manner. They were very competent. They were on the internal audit team, so they were the right people to do this. They knew the gap. They knew the principles, and they knew the laws and how transactions should be reported. They maintained absolute confidentiality in that they didn't even disclose the extent of this to their own family members. They, would say very little, that they found something people weren't really going to like, things that could be a big problem, but they never ever disclosed anything more. They kept it very, very confidential, understanding that it was so important that the work they were doing didn't get disclosed because they were concerned what records and information would be destroyed if it was found out. They had integrity to the point that knowing, what could happen if this was indeed fraud and it did come to light, when it did come to light, that they, as well as all of their coworkers and their friends, would be out of jobs. People like Cynthia herself had had almost 10 years with the company, and so there was a lot at stake, and yet they still had the integrity that even though it meant they wouldn't have jobs down the road, they still went through with their research. And they were very, very credible because of their background, their knowledge, their skill set at work. And finally, the third piece of the IMA statement is the resolution. In this document, there doesn't include any sort of internal steps on how to handle these type of issues at WorldCom, but Cynthia and her team did a great job, and they followed the IMA steps exactly, which first started talking to your manager. And they did that, and they were very careful in how they approached the manager, engaging his attitude to understand, was he part of the problem, or would this be completely new and unexpected to him? And as well as, very carefully talking to the individuals who did a lot of the journal entries and asking them questions to understand what was going on. Was there backup? Where did the entries come from? Who asked you to do them? And understanding, the impact that this had taken on those individuals directly. And then lastly, reporting it nationally, they ended up taking it instead of a hotline within the company or to the IMA, it ended up going completely public because at the same time they were, really into their research. There was an SEC request for information. So it allowed, this to come out very well. And so as a team, Cynthia Cooper, Mr. Morris, and Mr. Glenn Smith were a fantastic example and representation of the IMA statement and how they handled themselves, handled the fraud, and I'm very appreciative to them and the example that they've set for the rest of us in the accounting industry and how we should proceed when we run into these types of situations. Thank you. Bye.